Hello everybody and welcome back. In this video we're going to be discussing Solidity programming and how to implement functions inside of Solidity. So without further ado, let's get started. And before we start, I just want to let everybody know that this is a beginner's tutorial on how to write functions, and if you want a more explained and complex tutorial on functions and the different kinds of variations, you can go check out some other videos which may be on my channel, and if they're not yet posted, you can click the notification bell so that you get notified when they are. Alright, so let's get started. So in every single Solidity file, we needed to show an SPDX license identifier, and the way we do this is by typing SPDX right here. And you'll see that this tab is right here. So if we were to click it, we'll get this right here, and we have the MIT license identifier. So what this does is pretty much shows like who has the rights to our contract and all that kind of stuff. So once you do that, and if you don't actually have like the drop down where you can click on SPDX, you can just write this down in your own IDE. And yeah, without further ado, let's actually get started on the functions and the contracts. So first, we need to write down what variation of Solidity we're going to use, and that is written down by you typing pragma and then Solidity. And once we have that written down, we have to actually show what variation or version of Solidity we're using, which in this case, I'm going to use a caret, then I'm going to say 0.8.19. You can use a different one if you'd like, but if you want to follow along perfectly, you can use the exact same variation which I'm using. So now that we've got that done, let's create the contract. So now we can write down contract right here, and once we have that, we're going to write curly braces. But the problem is we get an error, and this is pretty much saying that we need to name our contract. And for today's video, I'm going to name our contract my contract, just like that. So what does the contract do? It's pretty much saying that this is where the code is all going to be located, and when you ever want to call like this function, you're most likely going to be calling this contract right here in this piece of code. So inside of this contract, we can actually write down the function, and the way you do that is by writing function, quite simple, and after that, you're going to write down the name of the function, similar to the way we did the contract, and I'm going to name the function chat. That's it, pretty much. So, and then after the chat, I'm gonna create curly braces. Sorry, not curly braces, just regular braces, just like so. And after that, I'm gonna write curly braces. Okay, let's review. So we have a function, which pretty much is saying that this is a function, and what this actual piece of code is doing, which in this case, since I put down function in the programming language and the IDE, knows that this is supposed to be like a function and could be called depending on what kind of type of function you're using. And right after that, we'll see that there's a name, which doesn't really matter what you choose to name it. As you can see, I named mine chat, which doesn't really make sense for what we're gonna write, but it doesn't really matter when you name your functions. And after that, you have braces, which is where you put down arguments, which we're going to be discussing in like a few seconds or minutes. And then you put curly braces, which pretty much says what is going to be inside of the function, and pretty much shows like where the start of the function is and where the end of it is. And anything inside of these braces is the actual code of the function. So let's look at this error which I received, and what it says is pretty much that there's no visibility. And so whenever you make a function, there has to be like a type to it. So in this case, I'm going to call it public, which pretty much means that anybody can call it, and it's free for everybody to use. And I'm also, right after the public, I'm going to write down pure, as this does not change anything in the contract. And after this, we can actually go into the insides of the contract and work on how to actually make this work. So first, I'm just going to say that this function is going to return a message. Okay, so now all I did is I just said return, and then I made braces, and inside of it I put message. But now, as you can see, we get an error. And what this error is saying is that message is not defined. Like, what is this message, right? Well, in our function, we want to make it so that the user is capable of deciding what this message is going to be. And the way we do this is by putting it inside of these braces right here, Remember when we first made the function, we said that these parentheses or braces contain the arguments. Well, this is what I'm talking about right now. And the way to create an argument is just by writing it down. So we're going to put down message right here. But if you see again, we get another error. And the reason for this is because we need to display the type of variable this is. Which in this case, it's like going to be a word or a message, right? And the way you define these is by saying string. Just like so. And again, we get another error. And that's because in Solidity, you also have to define what type of variable this is along with the string, which is memory. So now, finally, this is not an error. And now it's a string memory message. Oh, but wait, we get another error. When we wrote down return the message, we get another error. And this is because inside of a function, you need to declare what is going to be returned. And the way you do this is by right next to where we put pure, we're going to write down returns, which pretty much says to the function what kind of type of variable this function is going to return. And remember here, when we created this variable, we said that it's going to be a string memory. And since we're returning the same variable, we're just going to put down string memory. Just like so. And yeah, therefore, this is exactly how you can create a simple function which includes arguments. And something else we can do is actually write down a number. So the way we can do this is by saying uint, right? Which this int stands for integer, right? So now that we have that, we need to call this variable, which we're going to call value, just like so. So now that we have that, we get an error, and that's because it's unused, and that's what we're going to do right now. So along with this message, we're also going to be putting a value. And we just do that by putting a comma. And once again, remember we get an error because there's a different amount of return statements inside of our returns area. And remember what this was? It was a uint, right? So we're just going to put down uint right here. And remember that this memory here usually only applies to strings. And some other different types, but we won't be discussing that in this video. So, and there we go. Now we have fully working function. And yeah, that's perfect. So along with this, we can make some other different kinds of functions. So for example, let's make a function which we can actually do like addition with. And to do this, we're going to call this add. And remember, we're going to put these braces here, and inside of it we're going to have two different values, because remember, we're adding, right? So we want to add two different values. So what we're going to do is we're going to say uint, and then we're going to put value 1, and then we're going to say uint, and then value 2. And therefore, now we have two values inside of the arguments, right? And now we're going to make this function public, we're going to make it pure, and we're going to say it's going to return a uint, right? Because in this case, we're not going to be returning two things. We're only going to be returning one, because this one thing that we're going to be returning in the function is going to be the sum of both of the values. So therefore, in the end, we're only going to have one value. So that's why I'm only going to say that we're returning uint. So once we create the curly braces, which pretty much declares what's going to be inside of the, like where the function starts and ends, we can actually start writing our code. So all we have to say is we're actually going to make a new variable, and we're going to call this the sum. So just write down sum, and it's going to be equal to value 1 plus value 2, just like so. But we're going to get an error, and that's under the sum. And if you read it here, it's undeclared. And that's because we need to say that this is a new variable, and we have to say that's a uint, because remember, this is a number, right? So just like so, we got that down. And now we're going to write down a return statement. Oh, sorry, not returns, return. Remember, without the S. And this value is going to return the sum, because that's what we want to get back. And there we go. That's all you need to do. And after each line of code, remember, you need to put a semicolon. That is extremely crucial, because many coders forget to put down a semicolon, and they spend their whole night trying to figure out what their error is, and at the end of the day, it's just because they forgot to put down a semicolon. What this does is pretty much just shows where the end of the code is on each line, and it's extremely helpful if you remember to do it. And there we go. Now we created two functions. And remember, if you wanted to do like a subtraction, kind of function. We can do the same thing, change the variable name so that it makes more sense, and also change this symbol to be subtraction. But for this one, let's keep it as addition, and let's actually go test it. So to do this, we have to use a website called Remix, which is like a browser which you can just search up on Google Chrome, and it's very good at compiling and testing your projects. So without further ado, let's get into that. Alrighty. Now you should currently be on this Remix development tool, where you currently are capable of testing and compiling your code. So let's get started. If you look in the top left, you're going to see there's a contracts tab. And what we're going to do this with this is we're going to click on storage.sol, and we're going to delete every single thing inside of it, quite simply. And we're going to bring back the code which we wrote before. And yeah, now to compile this, we click on the Solidity icon on the left side of your screen, and you're going to get this tab right here, and you're going to press compile. And then after that, you're going to go down and click on this Ethereum logo. And what you're going to do is you're going to press deploy right here. And then once you do that, you're going to have this deployed contracts tab. And you're going to bring down this drop down. And you're going to see that you have the two functions which we wrote. So let's start with the chat, as this is the first function which we wrote. And we have two things we have to input, which remember is the message and the value. So for the message, let's do this, which is quotes, and we're going to write down hello, right? And hello world, actually, because that sounds better. And then after for the value, let's do the number 5, because why not, right? And now what we should get is it's going to return once again the hello world, and also it's going to return the 5. And would you look at that? We return the hello world, and under that we have the 5. Nice. Let's do the add function. So what we do is we input two values, which first, let's do the number 3, and let's also do the number 7, because why not, right? And once we call this, we'll get 10, which is correct. 3 plus 7 is 10. Perfect. Now, let's do one more thing. Let's do a higher number to see the max. So let's say we put 100 here, and let's do 200. We should get 300 from this. And would you look at that? We got 300. And let's do 5,000. And let's do 1,000, like that, and we should get 6,000. And yeah, that's it. We got 6,000. This is perfect. Our function is working perfectly. And if you keep making more functions like this, you're going to be able to have a full skill calculator, which is just awesome. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned a lot on how to make functions, contracts, and how to actually test and compile your work using Remix. If you enjoyed, please subscribe and leave a like on this video, and I'll see you guys in another one. Have a great day.